Hello, this is Tammy Pie, and I am coming to you with another VR. This is a VR to Natalia at Tarot Shrink, and it is poetic decks. So Natalia was coming from a place of not even really being terribly familiar with poetry. I, on the other hand, am coming from a place of being born into a poetic family. This is my father. This is one of many small publications that he had done. He was a poet most of his life, as well as being a pianist and bartender, pool shark. But I'll save this for a little bit later. Poetry is several different things. It is the command of language in such a way that it draws you a picture, paints you a feeling. And my first choice is going to be, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a poetic verse and show you cards while I do it. And you could decide whether you think this is as poetic as I think it is. My first one is actually a book that my father and my mother used to read to me when I was a child, a young child. And let's see. I was gonna pick these out, but there we go. Okay, let's do this. So the first one is Thornton Burgess's Mother West Wind's Children, and the deck is Ash, Oak, and Thorn by Three Trees Tarot. The merry little breezes threw themselves down on the edge of the smiling pool, where the rushes grew tall, and where they took turns rocking the cradle. Rocking the cradle which held Mrs. Redwing's 4 babies. Pretty soon, one of the merry little breezes, peeping through the rushes, spied Peter Rabbit sitting up very straight on the edge of the green meadows. His long ears were pointed straight up. His big eyes were wide open, and he seemed to be looking and listening with a great deal of curiosity. "I wonder why it is that Peter Rabbit has such long ears," said the merry little breeze. "Chug-a-rum," replied a great deep voice behind him. All the merry little breezes jumped up and ran through the rushes to the very edge of the smiling pool, and there on a great green lily pad sat Great-Grandfather Frog with his hands folded across his white and yellow waistcoat, and his green coat shining spick and span. "Chug-a-rum," said Grandfather Frog. "Oh, Grandfather Frog," cried the merry little breezes all together, "do tell us why it is that Peter Rabbit has such long ears." So this one is pretty obvious. I mean, we have Mother West Wind's Children, which are small creatures living in a forest by a pond. And we have the Oak, Ash, and Thorn, which pictures exactly that. Birds, bunnies, little forest creatures. So it's very obvious, poetic, kind of exact, right? Okay, so this next one will be an excerpt from The Raven by Edgar Allen Poe. And we're going to do the Raven's Prophecy, which is, I mean, it's a little on the nose, but This artwork is very, there's not a lot of extra detail that tells too much of a story, but it does kind of open the mind to kind of a trajectory of what you might think because of the imagery. And I think that Edgar Allan Poe is a little like that too. Open here, I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance he made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with the mien of lord and lady he perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marveled this ungainly fowl, to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore, for we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above this chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore. But the raven sitting lonely on the placid bust spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather then he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before, on the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. All right, this is the Lunatic Tarot. And the poet I decided to read from this one is Farugh Farrokhzad. And she is a very kind of delicious poet. Her poetry is very kind of lusty, and I like that. This poem is called In an Eternal Dusk. Day or night? No friend, it is eternal dusk, with two doves like two white coffins crossing in the wind, and from that strange land, distant sounds, unfixed and vagrant, like a drifting breeze. Something must be said, it must be said. My heart wants to mate with the dark. Something must be said. Such an onerous oblivion, an apple falls from a branch. Yellow flax seeds break between beaks of my lovesick canaries. A fava-bean flower, to release her silent anxiety of change, yields her blue veins to an intoxicated breeze. And here, in me, in my head, there is nothing in my head except twirling specks of turbid red. All right, I'm gonna move on to my father's poetry, which is kind of modern type of poetry. It is yeah, it's different. Okay. This kind of describes him pretty well. And this is the Hieronymus Bosch Tarot. by Travis McHenry. After a mild overdose of Llewellyn, I want to make a phone call, but where? I want to call somebody who loves me. Somebody who loves me. Somebody who wants to get naked and play interminably, even in a phone call. Girl in the park. Can you go down the water slide naked? Somebody threw my head down a well. I stand in the hall, muttering an imaginary lady, wondering, was I going to take a piss or did I just take one? Wanted to take a walk, but the jury hung irretrievably on which direction. Besides, I'm low on matches. I'd never make it. I'm pining for a woman who gets meaner than a partner with a burr up its ass. The only way out of this is wine and poems. Very bad wine and very good poems. I'm out of both. Muse, help. I can't do everything myself. Not even housekeeping in my own head. Maybe I'll stand in a bowl of coleslaw till I get a break. A great hooch angel fold me in your quivering wing. Yeah, he would have enjoyed that I chose to match up his poetry with Hieronymus Bosch. Okay, so let's go with the Alice Tarot. Queen Alice by Dame Darcy. And I'm going to match her up to Edward Gorey. And let's do the doubtful guest. When they answered the bell on that wild winter night, there was no one expected and no one in sight. Then they saw something standing on top of an urn whose peculiar appearance gave them quite a turn. All at once it leapt down and ran down the hall, where it chose to remain with its nose to the wall. It was seemingly deaf to whatever they said, so at last they stopped screaming and went off to bed. It joined them at breakfast and presently ate all the syrup and toast and part of the plate. It wrenched off the horn from the new gramophone and could not be persuaded to leave it alone. It betrayed a great liking for peering up flues and for peeling the soles off its white canvas shoes. At times it would tear out whole chapters from books or put roomfuls of pictures askew on their hooks. I don't even remember how many I've already done or which poets I visited. But let's do this. Let's go for Crimson Asteria and Emily Dickinson. I know some lonely houses off the road. A Robert like the look of, wooden barred and windows hanging low, inviting to a portico, where two could creep, one hand the tools, the other peep, to make sure all's asleep, old-fashioned eyes, not easy to surprise. How orderly the kitchen looked by night, with just a clock. But they could gag the tick, and mice won't bark, and so the walls don't tell, none will. A pair of spectacles afar just stir, and almanacs aware. Was it the mat winked, or a nervous star? The moon slides down the stair to see who's there. There's plunder, where? Tankard or spoon, earring or stone. To watch some ancient brooch to match the grandmama stayed sleeping there. Let's do Walt Witman and the True Black Tarot. O captain, my captain, our fearful trip is done. The ship has weathered every wrack. The prize we sought is won. The port is near, the bells I hear, the people all exulting, while follow eyes the steady keel, the vessel grim and daring. But O heart, 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 O the bleeding drops of red, where on the deck my captain lies, fallen cold and dead. O captain, my captain, rise up and hear the bells. Rise up, for you the flag is flung, for you the bugle trills. The bugle trills, for you bouquets and ribboned wreaths, for you the shores a-crowding, for you they call, the swaying mass, the eager faces turning. Here, captain, dear father, this arm beneath your head, in some that dream that on the deck you've fallen cold and dead. Okay, one last little poem. It comes from The Crystal Cave by Mary Stewart, and this is like a song that's sung by Merlin that he hears as he's walking down the road. Merlin, Merlin, where art thou going so early in the day with thy black dog? I have been searching for the egg, the red egg of the sea serpent, which lies by the shore in the hollow stone. And I go to gather the cresses in the meadow, the green cress and the golden grasses, the gold moss that gives sleep, and the mistletoe high on the oak, the druid's bough that grows deep in the woods by the running water. Merlin, Merlin came back from the wood and the fountain. Leave the oak and the golden grasses, leave the cress in the water meadow, and the red egg of the sea serpent in the foam by thy hollow stone. Merlin, Merlin, leave thy seeking. There is no diviner but God. So it could be argued that all tarot is kind of poetic. It's a way of learning a language and then taking that language and turning it into something memorable, something that other people can feel and there are many tarot decks that have been around for hundreds of years, but there's a lot more poetry that's been around for thousands of years. So maybe tarot's been around for longer than we think. I will try and leave links to where you can find these decks. Poetry is up to you. If I can figure it out, I'll do Natalia's YouTube video. And for anyone who's still here, thank you for coming.